your new favorite Friday morning program. As usual, I am your host, Winston Wright, Vice President for the County of Cornwall for the very enviable UIC, United Independence Congress. So today, I'm hoping to have my president on with me. And as you can tell from my topic, we're looking back at the earlier months of 2020 so far, and what has been transpiring on the road to liberty. Now, he will be joining us in a few minutes if I can tear him away from his meeting because he's always in meetings. So, hopefully, we can have a lovely chat. But just to start you off with what we're going to be looking at today, we're going to just grab a couple important markers and see what happened along the way, starting January. I know it's a festive season, and a lot of persons are not particularly feeling festive at this time, but with all things, we'll slow down. So we're just taking a slight departure from our usual program, the usual raving against political mismanagement, political corruption, and all that's wrong with this country. I'm not saying that we won't point out what's wrong and what the UIC has as a solution. What we'll do, as I said, is just look at what has been happening with liberty so far, how it has been dealt a serious blow when you look at the entire year and hope that we can do better for the coming year. The UIC will definitely be there along that journey with you, making sure that we as a country get to where we need to be with good governance, good practices throughout our entire social fabric is the norm. So in January 2020, what stood out to me was a call by the Negril Chamber of Commerce for Infrastructural Development in Negril. Now, again, I'm vice president for the county of Cornwall, which means that Westmoreland is one of the parishes that falls under my portfolio. And being a man from Westmoreland, I'm very familiar with the town of Negril. And throughout the years, from when I was a kid, Negril has not changed. It's basically two roads, that one on the stretch, and the stretch that goes down to the cliffs. So Negril is rife for development. But how can Negril develop? The sea on one side and an unplanned development on the other side, meaning the town just sprung up. Outside of the beaches, there were no thought that went into what's happening in Negril. They fixed the road a few months ago, and that was nice. But as usual, there's a quality control issue with road construction in Jamaica. There are a few lovely hotels in Negril, a few small boutique hotels in Negril, and that kind of development just sprung up. All right, guys. So that kind of development just sprung up, and you know, from time to time, buildings would go up with council approval, but there is no significant urban planning being done, long-term planning in laying out how this town of Negril should develop. And as more buildings are added, how the sewage system, for example, will be upgraded or maintained to make sure that we can get the best of our tax dollars. It is obvious from looking at the town that traditionally what you find with resort towns is that there are lovely buildings that are there to make sure that tourists come and they believe that they get the false impression that you're in a country that is well taken care of until they exit the resort corridor and see the reality of our everyday lives. The UIC intends to have Jamaica working with all citizens hand in hand, and I do emphasize working with all citizens hand in hand to make sure that the entire Jamaica looks like a resort town. Now, you might say that how will that happen? It's simple. If government is reduced to a respectable size, an effective size, and their spending habits curbed, and think about it. Let's look at the country as your house, and let's make the economy. That's small, so you can understand it. Your household budget is run by your salary and the earnings that you have coming in, whether it's directly from your job, your side hustle, your business, your side business. And if, for example, your two-bedroom household and a two-square plot is your country, and that's your economy, and you're earning from all your income sources $5, and when that $5 comes in, it buys food, pays the bills, it pays for health care, it provides utilities, and one day you look, all those bills add up to $6, but you're only bringing in a total of $5. You have a problem, right? Means that you're running a deficit. Now, what do? You increase your earnings by deciding to bring in more income by raising your price in whatever business you run or whatever service you provide. Or you can say, you know what, I need to cut unnecessary expenditure. I need to save money. I need to turn off a few lights, convert to energy efficient lighting, or most importantly, I can look at it and say, whatever is going on, let me identify the waste and stop that waste. Let's say there was a new baby added and diaper now becomes a factor. Then you have to deal with that because that baby is there. So naturally you need to boost your earnings. So looking at creating another source of income is good, which would be like now the country going out and increasing agricultural production. But unlike you go out and increase productivity to meet your increased demand, the government of the day either increase taxation or borrow money. Now, think about it. If you're borrowing money with no way of repaying it, what will happen? Your debt would mount. One year you owe $1, sorry. The next year you owe $2 plus interest. Another year you owe $3 plus interest on that $2, and so on. And the debt will keep compounding till eventually you end up with a $2 trillion debt that can't be repaid any at all. That is where Jamaica is. And that is where the UIC says that deficit spending needs to end. When we end deficit spending and take charge of how money is controlled, we will do better as an economy and we'll be able, through government responsible program that keyed in to the true responsibilities of government, will help make the entire Jamaica a resilient town. Morning, Mr. Patterson. Thank you for joining me.
Winston, thank you for having me. And I was just enjoying listening to your, summary of how it works in life and in government.
Thank you. Thank you. I learned from the best, from reading published as the money doctor has taught me a lot about the way government handle our expenditure.
Yes.
When I grew up, when I was growing up, one of the things I used to watch on TV was the budget debate. And I was fascinated by the way the government was able to lay out how they will spend our money. And I was impressed by the figures that were used. And I was impressed in the way they conduct themselves and how the government defended its position, whichever government was in power. But I will admit that my family at the time preferred one particular government. I will not say. So, I was always impressed with how the figures were rolled out and what they plan to do with the figures through the years. But as I got older and realized, I went to high school and then college, and as inadequate as that schooling was, and we'll talk about education some more another time. As inadequate as that schooling was, I realized that I needed to depart from it somewhat to get a better understanding. And when I departed from conditioning that I was receiving through the budget debates and those things that frame what is happening in such a positive socialist light, I now realize that it was a grand waste of money because all those trillions that were budgeted to be spent on roads that went into somebody's pocket, or the poor quality of the roads that were produced on that money, now showed me that it was a farce. Continue.
No, that's fine. I mean, I was enjoying listening to you. I mean, I had an opportunity over the years to observe Jamaica. And I always compare Jamaica with Singapore because Singapore got independence in 1965 and we got independence in
62.
62. At the time of our independence, Jamaica was far more developed than Singapore. We had a number of industries that were in full flight. Our people was quite settled, quite orderly. They were settled. There weren't any major clashes in terms, say, racial issues or religious issues. And we had a very good outlook on life. We were very excited about independence in 1962. However, the majority of us were still relatively poor. Our GDP per capita was around $550 per person. Incidentally, yeah, $550 per person. Incidentally, Singapore was the same thing, $550 per person in 1965. And why that is so important, Winston, is that it gives you an idea of how similar the two countries were in terms of economic. Now, Singapore had some unique challenges that happened in the 1960s. Singapore was fragmented by about 4 different major ethnic groups. So you had racial tensions. You have the mainland type Chinese, you have the Malaysians, you have the Indian population, and you have even division within the Indian population and some other groupings. But 4 major ethnic groups and different language. So they also have language differences. In Jamaica, we had just 2 languages. Our common vernacular that is called Patois, which I prefer to call the Jamaican language. And then we also have English. It was fighting over language. We weren't fighting over religion. They fought over religion. So they were divided along religion. They were divided along language. And of course, the majority of them were transient workers who didn't see Singapore as their home. They were more as a place to come make a little money and go back where they come from, kind of thing. And so Lee Kuan Yew had to contend with that. They also had a serious communist problem where they were fighting viciously internally between the communists and those who wanted freedom. So Singapore was in very bad shape in 1965. We were in very good shape, relatively speaking, in 1962, even though both countries' economic outputs were fairly similar. So they were poor alike, but different in terms of social problems. Let's fast forward now to today, okay? And look at the comparison between the two countries today. Now, Singapore adopted the UIC approach to life. They thought that if you want to build a strong country, ensure that it is safe. Make sure that the police works, that the people can trust the police. They can depend on the police when they call them. They can expect that crime will be resolved very quickly, investigated effectively and efficiently. So security was the #1 thing on Lee Kuan Yew's list. He was the leader of Singapore at the time. Make sure the place is safe. #2, he felt that country should be very clean. He thought that having a clean country would impact the minds and morale of the people. And he was right. And him had 2 components. Clean meant that the surrounding was clean, but not just clean, that it was beautiful. And not just beautiful, but that it was free of corruption as well. So clean for him meant a government and a clean environment and a pretty environment. So he planted up the place, it was green, manicured flowers and trees and green spaces and areas for families and the community and just everybody to enjoy. And also clean in the sense that the government was to be sparkling free of corruption. So his first government, they were only white to work. So all his ministers were white to parliament, indicating that they were going to be a clean government. Okay? And then when his best friend was accused of corruption, they just formed government a few years, his best friend accused of corruption, he distanced himself from him and said, let the legal process work. There must be no interference. And this friend was then a fellow parliamentarian, a fellow mid-government. And that was the first sacrificial lamb. And he made it clear that Singapore was not going to have any form of corruption in its government. So remember, I tell you, a safe environment, so the people felt safe. A clean environment, meaning government is clean and the environment is clean. And based on public order. So you must drive properly, walk properly. Government offices must work efficiently and effectively with quality customer service because it respected the citizens of the society. And so Lee Kuan Yew made sure that Singapore was safe, clean, and orderly. Exactly what we're going to do as a UIC. Now,
Now,
Winston,
you see,
yeah, go ahead.
I like the Singapore comparison because it shows people that it is very possible for Jamaica to do the same thing, even at this late stage. But I'll share a secret with you. My last, what I'll call regional posting before coming back to Jamaica, I worked with a young man that studied in Singapore, a very intelligent young man. He studied engineering in Singapore, and he totally loves the country. And he said he would move back there in a heartbeat. But he was there on a government scholarship, and even though he's not bonded, by the way, he came back to his country to provide service as required. But that's beside the point. Now, I've also been fascinated with Singapore for a number of years because I know that Singapore sent a delegation to Jamaica prior to their independence to study our economic model and implemented it in Singapore. So the economic model we had at independence up to the early 1970s was what Singapore used as the basis, the framework for their
Are
economic
you,
model.
are you
And
sure?
yes,
Are you sure? I've heard that before, Winston. I've heard it before that Singapore came to Jamaica, started the bike here. But Singapore, Jamaica,
right.
and used our economic model. It's not quite so. I'll tell you why. What you did, and he's a very brilliant man. Lee Kuan Yew was not afraid to study every country. So he traveled around the world and he met with world leaders and he looked at what is working and what is failing, what is working and what is failing, what is working. He looked at all of these. And one thing he came away with, believe it or not, look at the difference. He did not implement a minimum wage in Singapore. His minimum wage would prevent those persons who can only compete on their wages getting a job. They have nothing else to offer but to say, I'll work for less. He says to take away that from a man is to rob him of the ability to negotiate based on his own competences and abilities. He also said the government has no right or place interfering between two persons negotiating and reaching an agreement on what they will pay and what they will accept as wages. He also said he noticed that countries that does not allow the free market to operate fully undermines economic growth and only creates avenues for corruption by giving the politician power over the people's economy. And so he decided that Singapore would follow a model whereby there's no minimum wage and the government does not interfere, even though it will partner with private sector to bring industry to their country. So in the end, the Singaporean model is not quite what other countries have. Many countries, for example, China today, the Singapore model, which is similar in that China does not have a partisan government. They have a not communist, a dictatorship. But they're trying to free the market at the same time because they realize what made Singapore so successful is that Singapore did not succumb to partisan policy that we have. So the government was not always under pressure to offer idealistic unreasonable freeness to the society, which cannot be sustained by the economy. Instead, the government was able to plan how to allow the country to make sure it's safe, make sure it's orderly, make sure it's clean, so that the people can be the producer. The similarity between Jamaica then and Singapore then is that Jamaica was more of a free market then and became less and less of a free market over time. So that's the similarity. But to be fair to Lee Kuan Yew, and if you asked him before he passed away, he would be very upset if you told him that he came and borrowed Jamaica's model. And many people have been saying that for years, but it's not quite true. He didn't borrow, he simply learned what wasn't working.
Okay, so it was an expedition of exclusion. Okay, they're doing this wrong, so
Yes.
I won't do it. Okay,
exactly.
Another lesson learned. Thank you, Mr. Patterson. So here, and we were going to talk about year in review, but I love hearing your comparison because again, it shows what is possible. So let me ask you this question: If Jamaica changes direction, let's say government of vision at the UIC, well, the UIC takes office, how could we make this possible? What are tell you what? Since I only have 8 minutes, tell me the four most important things a UIC government led by you would do to get a process like this in place.
Well, the first and foremost, we have to get rid of the existing constitution. Invites us and encourages us to fight each other. That's number one. So we have to get rid of partisan politics by changing the model of our governance so that we can actually focus on the issues that we need to work on. Secondarily, it comes back again to the Constitution. We must remove the avenues of corruption, which this Constitution does. It builds in corruption and puts massive amount of centralized power in the hands of the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's office, and those who control it by way of campaign financing. So we're going to change the model so that campaign financing and big money no longer runs our government, and Prime Minister's office no longer have this superpower to corrupt the entire country. Secondarily, we're going to create a truly free market that will allow the person in the economy maximum opportunity to create a business, simply because the government regulations are no longer designed to stifle him. Presently, regulations are designed to protect big business from small business by making it very expensive and costly for small businesses to thrive. We're going to remove all of those regulatory situations and free up the small business, free up the micro sector so that they can blossom. But most importantly, Winston, we have to make sure we get security under control. Without security, people can't plan, they can't invest, they can't build, they can't grow properly. They can try, and they do. We're trying people. But if you make the environment safe, you'll see far more investments, both Jamaicans from overseas coming back and so on. Yes.
All right. So you mentioned security. And again, while we're doing the interview, I just love this. So let me ask you, to make Jamaica secure, in a nutshell, just a summary.
Yes.
4 things that you would do.
Sure. First and foremost, you have to remember, Jamaica is not secure because the two main parties have been a part of creating the problem. So they don't have the moral of crime, because if they do address it fully, it's going to bring up some skeletons which will affect them. So the SC will not have the baggage of being involved with creating criminal gangs and garrison communities and having links with criminals. We don't have that. So we can now address the issues. We'll bring in a Truth and Reconciliation Commission that gives especially low-grade criminals a chance to come forward, confess, so understand what has been going on, give them an opportunity to be rehabilitated and come back into society having paid their dues, but get them out of the system. Protect our borders. Jamaica does not manufacture guns and ammunition. So if we just simply protect our borders, we reduce the number of guns on the street and the ammunition. We also need to be a right for ordinary citizens to be able to protect themselves, to arm the society, and also provide training for Jamaicans to learn how to defend themselves physically from dangerous criminals. And if criminals know that we, the people, are prepared for them, they will think again before they attack the ordinary citizen. So these are basic things we can do to fix the situation right away. But quickly, I want to share with you just some key statistics from Singapore because we're on the topic. If you are born instead of Jamaica, you will live 11 years old. If you are born in Singapore instead of Jamaica, you will earn 7 times money. If you're born in Singapore instead of Jamaica, you're 86% less likely to be unemployed. You get that? If you're born in Singapore, you are 86% less likely to be unemployed. While if you're born in Jamaica, you're more likely to be unemployed. You're likely to make a low income, even if your qualifications are big, and you're more likely to die 11 years earlier if you're born in Jamaica. Now, we want to flip that script, and the only way to flip it is to learn from the best and build on it. We're not going to copy everything Singapore does, but why not learn from them? And it's very clear, Winston, if you have a safe environment, if you have a clean environment, if you have an orderly environment, your economic productivity will go up and your people will enjoy a better standard of living.
That sounds admirable. And the idea of learning from the international community and learning from those who are doing it well and adopting those models is not something that is new to Jamaica or the rest of the world. Best practices are common trait in business and government. So
Yes.
it is admirable that UIC will look to that. And I'm sure the UIC is not only looking to Singapore as an example of what can be done in terms of national building.
We only chose Singapore because they're so similar in origin. The same year, there were British colonies, like us, they were a British colony, and they got independence around the same time as us. And they were worse than us, better than us in a short period of time. But we've also looked at other countries like the Netherlands. The Netherlands is a small country, relatively speaking, yet still they are the #2 producers of food in the world. They feed the world, just behind the US. A small area compared to the US, smaller number of people than the US, and yet still #2 producer of food in the world. Jamaica, for example, could have been the organic food capital of the world if our politicians weren't short-sighted and quickly accepted free fertilizer and free GMO seed, which destroyed our fertility and moved our farmers away from becoming smart organic producers to becoming dependent on foreign fertilizers and foreign seeds. The UIC will reverse that. We're going to help our farmers to go back to organic production and to protect our environment and build our ecosystem so that Jamaica becomes the organic food capital of the world.
I have 1 minute, and I have one question that I hope you can answer in that minute. There are several agricultural institutes in Jamaica that are idle or underutilized. What will the UIC do with those?
Very simple. We're going to remove the government from being the upstream organization. Once we have a government which is no longer obstructionist and partisan and focused on having political power over the economy, power over people, and free Jamaican people, you will have many more businesses, many more institutes, many more organizations, many more, and you'll see the genius of the other 2.89 million Jamaicans and the other 3 million Jamaicans around the world coming to fruition. Right now, the government is the serious problem preventing all of these creative Jamaicans from unleashing their full potential because 63 or 33 or 45 men and women, a subset of our society, gets to be gatekeeper and decide who gets to go forward or not. We must get rid of this blockage that's blocking our people, which is called the government, and give them a government which is truly a facilitator and enabler. That is the key to unleashing all of Jamaica's potential.
That is great. Now, I was going to talk about the things that are happening in Jamaica that has happened in the past couple of months, which have brought some doom and gloom. But what you have just brought is Christmas hope for the entire Jamaica and hope for the future. Thank you for changing the dynamics. Guys, I didn't want to go into the new year speaking gloom and doom. So I really appreciate you switching the dynamics and letting us know that there's hope. Here's an example. There are examples out there that we can follow and that the UIC have a plan. We don't just say the government isn't doing or the government is doing wrong, but we say the government can do this and we will do this, and these things will take us forward as a nation, change the trajectory of our path, where persons are hustlers and beggars, productive members of the global community. Mr. Patterson, thank
Absolutely.
you for being on with me this Friday. As usual, it's lovely having you on all the time. And I'll see you to all viewers. Thank you for spending your Friday morning with me as usual. And Mr. Patterson, of course. It's great to have you join us on Liberty TV. Share, like, subscribe. Go to uicjamaica.com. If you have questions, send us an email or join our Facebook page, join the Facebook discussion, leave your comments, send your questions, and of course, look how you can serve your country. The UIC needs you. Volunteer, join. We look forward to having you. Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Have a good Friday, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone. Happy holidays, and